Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining GIG for today's webinar titled A Look into GFCO Certification, The Truth Behind the Logo. I'm Chris Ridge, Vice President of Development for the Gluten Intolerance Group. Joining me behind the scenes for today's webinar is Michelle Spano, GIG's Communications Manager. Today's webinar is sponsored by Import LLC, makers of the Gluten Tox Pro test kits. This webinar is part of a series of educational opportunities that GIG is offering to provide a better understanding of our gluten-free certification process and what helps to differentiate us from other certification company standards. By being a part of today's webinar, you're going to receive future invitations to webinar events that make up this educational series as a whole. I want to address a couple of housekeeping items before introducing you to our speakers for today's event. During this webinar, everyone's microphone will be muted. If you have questions, please type these into the chat box and we'll address all of those received at the end of our presentation during a Q&A session. And you'll also be getting an email in the next 24 hours with a link to the recording of this webinar. We're also going to be creating a future post of the recording on our website at www.gluten.org and also www.gfco.org. So if you feel that someone you know would be interested in what we talked about today and could not join us, you can go ahead and point them to our sites and they can listen at their convenience. I want to start by providing a quick background about GIG before introducing you to the great people who's going to be talking about our topic over the next 45 minutes or so. The Gluten Intolerance Group, or GIG, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're entering our 44th year of existence. Our mission is to empower the gluten-free community through consumer support, advocacy, and education. We achieve this mission through outreach programs, which include domestic and international support groups, our gluten-free kids program, Generation GF, and a free membership model that gives individuals access to digital and printed educational materials and resources. GIG also supports our gluten-free community through our food safety programs, which many of you will recognize, but some may not realize are programs of GIG. This includes our GFCO program, the Gluten-Free Certification Organization, which we're going to focus on today. GFCO is the leading third-party certification program of gluten-free products in North America. And that GFCO logo is a symbol of trust within our community, and it's currently found on more than 51,000 products worldwide. We also have our GFFS program, the Gluten-Free Food Services Certification, which focuses on the education and training of food service establishments, such as restaurants, hospitals, university, and elder care facilities. The formalities, now that those are taken care of, let's get into what you are all here for and allow me to introduce our guest for today's topic. Speaking first will be Laura Allred. She's the Regulatory and Standards Manager for GIG and our GFCO program. Following Laura is going to be Molly Hamilton. She's the owner and founder of Molly's Bakeovers. And also joining us today is Melissa Hughes, and she is the Quality Assurance Specialist for Ultra Eco. Melissa, both Molly's Bakeovers and Ultra Eco, they manufacture products that are certified by GFCO. And Molly and Melissa today will be discussing what GFCO certification has meant to their respective companies. So welcome to all of our panelists. So our first speaker today is going to be Laura Allred. And in full transparency, Laura, she had an urgent matter come up, and so her portion of this webinar is pre-recorded. She is going to be able to hop on at the end of the presentation with any questions that you have, but she's not able to do her live presentation today. So as we play Laura's presentation, attendees, please remember to type in your questions into the chat box. And as organizers of this webinar, we're going to try to get to as many of these as we can during our wrap-up Q&A session. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and hit play and let Laura take it from there.
Thank you. To get us started today, I wanted to give you some of the specifics of what's required for a product to carry the GFCO certification logo and tell you how our certification differs from others you might see out there. We think it's very important for consumers to understand all of the work that manufacturers do to achieve GFCO certification for their products, and also to be transparent about our certification processes, so consumers know what to expect from us and from the companies that use our logo. We get a lot of questions about what is and isn't allowed when manufacturing certified products, so I'll cover those as I go, but please make sure to ask any questions. The Gluten-Free Certification Organization is a program of the Gluten Intolerance Group of North America, better known as GIG. GIG was founded in 1974 as a nonprofit support group for persons with celiac disease, and a big part of their focus was on helping each other find safe foods. GIG was and still is managed by an independent board made of professionals from various industries. In 2007, the FDA released their proposed regulation on the labeling of gluten-free foods, which didn't become a final regulation until 2013. But as an organization that had focused on this issue for decades, GIG had already started a gluten-free certification in 2005 with the sole purpose of helping the gluten-free community identify safe products. This program grew quickly and today has a full-time staff of about 15 people, the majority of whom work in GIG's offices in Auburn, Washington, and Sebastian, Florida. Even as the program has grown, GIG has maintained its nonprofit status, and the income from the GFCO certification programs is used to operate GIG support groups, kids camps, and other outreach and education programs. Before we get into the certification specifics, there's some important things to know about GFCO's product certification that differentiate it from other gluten-free certification programs. The first is that GFCO's certification is accredited to ISO 17065 by an independent accreditation body. ISO 17065 is an international standard for product, process, and service certification. This standard and GFCO's internal policies require that we hold every manufacturer to the same requirements for product certification, and GFCO has the strictest and most comprehensive set of production requirements of any gluten-free certifier. There are some other programs out there that certify manufacturers' processes under 17065 or another ISO standard called 17021. These programs then allow the manufacturer to decide on their own which products can carry that certifier's logo. This is what's referred to as self-certification. In contrast, GFCO operates as a true product certification under the ISO 17065 standard. We don't certify the manufacturer or their processes, although we do audit those to make sure they meet our requirements. But only we decide which products can carry our logo. Certifying the product and not the process is a lot of extra work, but it's essential for maintaining product safety. Because we certify the actual products, we're responsible for ongoing surveillance to make sure that those products meet our standards, rather than leaving that up to the manufacturer. We'll talk a little more about that surveillance as we go through the specifics of certification. Once a company applies to use the GFCO logo on their products, there are three main steps for achieving and maintaining certification. Each of these steps seems fairly simple, but it actually has a lot of research and knowledge behind it that's led to the development of our specific criteria. The first thing to keep in mind about GFCO certification, which I've already mentioned, is that it's granted individually to one specific product made at one specific plant. We already talked about the fact that GFCO does not certify manufacturers, but it also doesn't grant blanket certification to product categories or product types. What this means is that as the first step, every applicant for certification must provide us with a list of every product they would like to have certified, as well as a complete list of every ingredient used in those products. Every single one of these products and ingredients is individually reviewed, risked, and approved by GFCO. This is a very unique process, and I can tell you it's a step where we catch a lot of potential problems. It's not unusual for us to deny certification at this step, or to tell an applicant that they can't use a certain ingredient in their products. GFCO has always recognized that this step is key to ensuring safe gluten-free products, and it's the reason why we don't certify manufacturing processes or product categories. And GFCO is really the only certifier capable of performing this type of review and risking. We've spent over 13 years developing a comprehensive database of the ingredients used in the food industry and evaluating their risk in gluten-free production. This background and knowledge allow us to assign risk-based testing requirements for raw materials to let us target the most likely sources of gluten contamination. When we've approved the products that a client intends to certify, the second step in certification is the approval of the manufacturing facilities that make that product. GFCO does not allow a manufactured product to be certified if all we can see is the step where it's packaged. We need to see all of the plants where the manufacturing happens. And every facility needs to meet all of the requirements of the GFCO standard. This includes very small plants and even plants that are dedicated to gluten-free production. The GFCO standard requirements are there to ensure that the plants are proactive, preventing gluten contamination before it can occur. While the standard does include some HACCP principles, and for those of you not in the food industry, HACCP stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. HACCP is focused primarily on catching contamination once it's happened. The GFCO standard is better aligned with current food safety practices, such as the Food Safety Modernization Act and other prerequisite programs that focus on prevention. The GFCO standard is made up of 80 separate requirements that cover everything from purchasing to recalls. Every one of the standard requirements is essential to maintaining safety and continuity in the plant's gluten-free operations. The 80 requirements are broken up into the general categories you can see here, and I'll touch on some of the key requirements are most often asked about by consumers, as well as some others that are essential but may not be as well known. Starting with our organizational requirements, those are there to ensure that the plants train their staff on the sources of gluten, the risks of gluten contamination, and the processes they have in place to ensure a safe gluten-free product. It's required that this training extend to all plant staff, including those on the production lines and those that interact with the public. It's very important that customer service and sales staff understand the company's gluten-free products and why they're making them. This is definitely something we hear about when a consumer calls a company about a certified product and the person on the phone has no idea about the plant's gluten-free program. And these kind of training records are definitely something that our auditors review on site. The organizational requirements also include a request for proof that the plant meets all applicable laws for gluten-free production and packaging. And for food producers in the U.S., this means that our auditors are looking for their permit to manufacture, typically issued by each state. GFCO certification and the logo can be used in any country as long as the product meets the requirements for gluten-free labeling in that country. In the U.S., Europe, and Canada, this includes meeting the GFCO 10 ppm threshold that already exceeds the national regulations in all of those countries. But some other countries have definitions of gluten that include oats, or a lower threshold for gluten-free labeling, and the manufacturers must meet those requirements in order to use the logo in other countries. We do sometimes get applications for certification from plants that don't yet have their permit to manufacture food, or who have one that's lapsed, and we can't grant certification until this is taken care of. This requirement also prevents us from being able to certify products from home kitchens. The organizational requirements also include things like job descriptions and company organizational charts, which I know some people view as paper pushing. But if you have an employee that's key to operating your gluten-free program and that employee leaves, if you don't have a complete list of their job duties, something can get missed, and we don't want that to be anything related to gluten-free production. The next category of requirements are the ones that people think of most often, and those are the ones related to the production process. But before you can get to the production floor, you have to obtain your raw materials. So our requirements here start back at purchasing and receiving. In a dedicated gluten-free plant, incoming raw materials are the largest source of risk, so it's essential that steps be taken to properly vet suppliers and check incoming shipments. There are a lot of ingredient suppliers out there that make both gluten-free and non-gluten-free versions of the same materials, so this section also covers the use of specific material names or part numbers on purchasing documents, as well as requirements for labeling and storing raw materials to prevent confusion. The production requirements also include the need for documented, validated, or verified cleaning practices. I won't go into the difference between validation and verification, but the plant basically has to prove that their cleaning methods work. GFCO does allow products made in non-dedicated facilities to be certified, so cleaning practices and the demonstration of their effectiveness take up a large part of this section of the standard. Other production requirements include employee and visitor hygiene to prevent the introduction of gluten, proper record keeping to allow traceability of all products back to their individual ingredients and forward to the retailer or distributor, and things like production sequencing, which means that gluten-free production should typically occur first after equipment is broken down and cleaned, and other criteria like dust control and waste handling. In the event that a company has a gluten contamination incident or suspects they've had one, the GFCO standard has specific requirements about how to proceed, including a detailed investigation of the incident and the development of a plan to prevent the same type of incident in the future. This section also requires the plant to have written plans for how they'll handle contaminated facilities, contaminated products, mislabeled or mispackaged products, and recalls. The next section of the standard is about testing, and by now you're seeing that testing is a very small part of the actions a plant has to take to make certified products. But it is critical to verifying product safety. Once a new plant has demonstrated that it meets all of the GFCO standard requirements, they're assigned a set of testing requirements that are based on the risks in that plant. These always include the need to test any high-risk ingredients prior to use in a certified product, as well as equipment testing for shared equipment, and always some level of finished product testing. These testing requirements are reviewed and updated after each audit. The testing section of the standard requires plants to perform their testing as assigned by GFCO, using only the test methods approved by GFCO. The plants must submit records of this testing to GFCO every quarter and must immediately report any confirmed positive results in finished products. This section also includes a requirement that's unique to GFCO certification, and that's a requirement that plants participate in proficiency testing. Proficiency testing is a program where plants receive unknown samples. They then test those and send their results back to the proficiency testing organizer. Then later they find out what those samples were, how much gluten they contain, and they can evaluate how their lab did on that testing. This type of program is essential because we have manufacturers using testing to verify the safety of their products, but we previously didn't have an independent way to verify that they were using the test kits correctly. The last part of the standard covers surveillance and improvement. We want to see that the plant is reviewing their gluten-free practices and always looking for ways to do things better. This section includes requirements for internal audits and mock recalls. It also includes a requirement that the plant allow GFCO to collect samples for testing. Once we've confirmed through our auditors and any internal follow-up that the plant can meet all of the standard requirements, we can grant certification to the products we've already reviewed and approved. But granting certification is definitely not the end of the story. It's really only the beginning. Because products are manufactured year-round, we need to do a lot of surveillance to make sure that those products continue to meet our standards. GFCO does an annual audit of every manufacturing facility that makes certified products. In addition to the testing done by the manufacturers and reviewed by GFCO each quarter, GFCO does our own independent testing of over 650 certified products each year. GFCO and our lawyers also spend a lot of time protecting the use of our logo on product packaging and in advertising to make sure it isn't used in a way that could confuse consumers. And as I mentioned before, manufacturers must report any positive results in finished products so that GFCO can have a say in product release decisions and so we can let consumers know as quickly as possible. With all of these details about production and manufacturing requirements, the thing that truly sets GFCO apart from other certifications is our focus on consumers. Consumer safety was the foundation of GIG when it started 44 years ago, and the reason why the GFCO program was developed. This focus on consumers is why we operate a transparent, accredited certification, and why we take the additional steps of reviewing and approving every product and individual ingredient, rather than just certifying a plant's processes. It's why we assign risk-based testing to our manufacturers, and why we do all the surveillance activities that we do, from audits to testing to PT. Our goal is to continue to make this program better, which is why we hold webinars like this. Feedback from manufacturers and consumers is essential for the GFCO program. So thank you for attending today and for sharing your questions and comments.
Okay, so thank you to Laura for again putting that together for us. For those who may have joined late, Laura did have to record her session, and I understand there may have been a little bit of an audio issue there. We will adjust that on the recording to make sure that when you get the email with the recorded session, you're able to hear any part that you may have missed there. And Laura will be, again, she'll be able to hop on live and answer any questions that you have at the end of the webinar. So if you have anything, please put it in that chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. Speaking of questions, if you do have any inquiries about our certification program outside of this webinar, we do have a Facebook group that we've set up to help address these. It's called the GIG Food Certification Forum. It's really important you hear the name, so I'll say it again. GIG Food Certification Forum. This is a closed group on Facebook, and so you'll need to send a request to us for approval, but everyone is accepted when they send that request in. We set this forum up as a place for the community to ask questions that you may have regarding our processes, labeling, safety alerts, etc. We monitor our social media daily, and so we see the questions that are out there, and we wanted to create another means of open communication with us here at GIG and GFCO so we can address those questions for you. So the group, again, GIG Food Certification Forum. So we look forward to seeing you there. All right, our next presenter today is Molly Hamilton, and we're going to go ahead and get Molly unmuted here so we can start on her part of the presentation. Molly is, again, the owner and founder of Molly's Bakeovers. So Molly, thanks for being a part of our webinar today. For those in the for those in the audience who may not be familiar with you or your company, give us a brief introduction of Molly's Bakeovers and what you're all about.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Chris. Thanks everybody for listening in and bearing with me because I'm getting over a cold. I started Bakeovers a couple years ago. Those are not all three of my children, but I have 4 kids, all of whom have food allergies, one kind or another, and wanted to come up with a snack that I could get them to eat, but that was also free of their allergens. And while mine were more on the nut side, and as 2 of them a strong sensitivity to gluten, I understood how significant living with food allergies is. So I started Bakeovers, which are makeovers, the play on makeover of a standard cookie to make them healthier and made without gluten, dairy, peanut, egg, soy, or tree nuts other than coconut. And early on, I think I was introduced to you all through another brand, the Toasted Oat, and my friend there who lives with celiacs, and her product of granola is certified through you all as well, when I was really looking for guidance on how the process works, the legitimacy, so that when I'm out selling a product, a level of assurance that I'm giving people a product that I can say, yes, this meets the highest standards that we can to have a gluten-free product. So for me, that's really what it's trusting that I've got a process in place so that when I go out to consumers, I understand how critical it is, since I live with food allergies in my household, that there was a group out there that could guide me and guide whomever I was using, since I use third-party co-packers, that they're meeting the requirements. So I think it could have been 2 years ago. It was a business that's been around 2 years. I'm sorry, I should have looked this up before I presented. But the one stable for me has been gluten-free intolerant group, because I've changed co-packers, and when I've had to change co-packers, it has been great to have these guys on my team, a resource, and again, trust in the process that we get. They're auditing everything that I do and everything my co-packer does, and that's what you really want. You want an independent third-party process to do that audit. And that has resonated with customers. When I'm standing in stores doing demos, that's one of the questions we get asked all the time. And sadly, it's the only standard for food allergies is with in regards to gluten. You don't have it with the other allergens. And people look for the logo, and they see it on my brand, even on our packaging, even when I'm not there. So it's both a selling tool and a trust in the brand that, hey, we've gone to great lengths to not just say it's gluten-free, but to test and meet the independent standards of these guys. Another thing with go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, you kind of addressed it. I'm sorry to interrupt there, but do you feel that being certified through GFCO gives you any type of an edge with your competition?
Oh, yeah. I think especially if you're looking to a product, whether or not you've got a need, whether it's something you're just avoiding because you feel better when you don't have gluten or you have a real life-threatening allergy, I think it reflects on a brand that you are going to make the investment and a statement that you give to really back it up. So, and that transcends just the gluten part, right? That if you're going to go to great lengths to validate whatever you say. And I think that definitely is a differentiator across the board. And again, I think if you do it with gluten, it's a good reflection with the company, especially for me as a small business. And I'm competing for coveted shelf space across the country. And I think more than ever, consumers want transparency. And I think what you guys give is that transparency that hey, these aren't Molly standards. These aren't the co-packer or you have no idea who she's using standards. These are an independent standard that anyone who bears our label, our logo on their label has to meet. So that's what I think. But again, I started this business because I understood the need to bring safe foods to market. So it helped me, and I wish you guys could do it across all allergens, to know that there is third party, it's checks and balances. It's food, it's people's lives. You want to do it, you know? It's not the area to skimp, in my opinion.
So as a small business owner, you're in comparison to the bigger companies that are out there. If I have some small business owners that are on this webinar right now and they're wondering, why should I get certified? Does it matter? Did you have any advice for them? If you could look back on, entering this a couple of years ago, what advice do you have for them in terms of making that decision to become certified?
Well, statistically, 1 in 3 Americans, I think, is the accurate stat, opt for gluten-free. So for me, I had to decide, sure, I'd love to do kosher, I'd love to do organic or GMO free, and those are on my wish list to add. But I started with gluten-free because it was the one that comes down to someone's health, and it's one that not only had the widest reach with 1 in 3 Americans opting. So it doesn't mean they necessarily have to, but they look for it. And if they're going to opt for it, they want to know, well, how do we verify? What are you doing to confirm that you're gluten-free? So that's where I spent the resources I had. It went to gluten-free before it went to the others that I'd like to add.
Okay. Well, I think that's all.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, it does. It does. And so that's really good advice we get a lot of questions from people about, what's the benefits of getting certified? And that is, from a small business owner, it's really helpful to have your type of feedback on that because you've gone through this.
Oh, and I would add then, Chris, if you're competing for a retailer, so it may not be as critical if you're just selling online. It's critical with the consumer. But if you're trying to compete for shelf space, I haven't filled out paperwork yet with an existing or prospective retailer that hasn't had a box, are you gluten-free certified? So not, is your product made with gluten? It's, are you gluten-free certified? So it's a must if you want to compete in any retailer of, a decent size. And then when they're deciding, they know it's the 1 in 3 Americans too. If it's your brand versus one that's certified, they're going to look they could rule you out right then and there because they don't want to deal with the headaches of you're not certified, people, consumers. So I do think it comes back in marketing and in sales in having that. At least that's been my experience.
Okay. So did I finally hit the slide with your kids? Are these your kids?
Yes, in the kitchen.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Molly, where can consumers
Good.
find products out there?
So we just rolled out to Whole Foods in the Mid-Atlantic region, which is Kentucky, out to Ohio, not what you would typically think of Mid-Atlantic, and up to New Jersey, so Richmond, all those stores, and throughout the DC area. We're in Northern California, Safeway, and we'll be back on Amazon probably in early October, and hopefully we are in parts of New York, independent grocers, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey as well.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you for joining us today, for sharing your experiences with everyone who's on this webinar. Again, much appreciated for your feedback.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Cool.
I'll
All right.
go back to mute.
All right. Thanks, Molly. So our next speaker that we're going to go to, oh, and there was another Molly slide. So our next speaker we're going to go to is Melissa, and Melissa Hughes is the Quality Assurance Specialist with Alter Eco. Melissa, let's get her unmuted and thank her for joining us.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me to speak today for this webinar.
Oh, you're welcome. I would like to do the same thing, Melissa, like we did with Molly previously. For the people who are on this webinar and joining us who might not be familiar with Alter Eco, give us a little bit of background about your company and the products that you have.
Absolutely. So Alter Eco, we're based in San Francisco, California. That's where our headquarters is. We were founded in 2005, and we had a plethora of products when the U.S. company started, and then we have actually scaled back, and our focus now is on chocolate. So we have chocolate bars, chocolate truffles, dark chocolate coconut clusters, so that is definitely our focus. So that's the products, but more importantly, our mission is full circle sustainability. That has been the driver for Alter Eco since the beginning. And we basically focus on 4 pillars here at Alter Eco. The first big one is fair trade. So we are all about sourcing from small-scale farmer-owned co-ops around the world. And then we were one of the first fair trade companies here in the United States. So we've been a huge driver with fair trade and getting that out here in the U.S. And then by being a fair trade company, we're certified by different fair trade groups depending on the market that we're in. But the purpose of fair trade is basically the producers and farmers get paid a living wage, and then we actually give back a part of our premium to support those co-op farms, whether it's making improvements at the farm level, living conditions, improving equipment, and so forth, and basically building those communities. And so we source from all over the world from different cooperative farms. So that's one of our very important pillars. The other one is we are organic and non-GMO project verified for all of our products. So it's all about, clean ingredients, knowing the source and where everything is coming from. So that's also a very huge thing for us. The third pillar is carbon neutral. So for some of our source farms, we actually have different things in place like agroforestry efforts, improving soil health, and putting CO2 back into the soil for what we use to grow our cacao. So we have different projects in partnership with Pure Projet and the Carbon Neutral Project. So with this, we're basically partnering with them and improving soil health in Ecuador and Peru. And then our fourth pillar is packaging. A lot of packaging just goes straight to the landfill. We do everything we can to try to use packaging that's either recyclable or compostable. So this is a huge mission for us. Our truffles, the individual wrappers are actually compostable, and our quinoa pouches as well. And then, yeah, this slide here. So this is our chocolate bars that we currently sell. We sell 10 bars, and I just want to point out for this audience here that we do have one bar that is not gluten-free and not certified by GFCO. That's our salt and malt bar. But every other chocolate bar that we sell is certified gluten-free by GFCO. And then for the next slide, this is our chocolate truffles. And so all of our chocolate truffles are certified gluten-free, and that's very important to us. And we sell these in different formats in 10-count packages as well as 60-count boxes that you might find close to a cash register or, quick and easy to grab. So we've been selling these products for a while, and all of our chocolate is actually made in Switzerland. And then our latest product, the dark chocolate coconut clusters, were launched very early 2018. So we're very excited about this new product. The chocolate is still sourced from Switzerland, but they're actually manufactured in Denver, Colorado. And we use a manufacturer that is they're a gluten-free facility. It's a very exciting new product, 3 flavors. And so you can find these in several retailers now. So we're very excited about this. And then next slide, please, Chris. So this is a selection of some of our current retailers where you can find Alter Eco products. We are in, places like Whole Foods and Raley's, Kroger, and then other like smaller local natural grocery stores. You can find us. And then we now have a recently relaunched website, and you can order our products online at the website below, www.alterecofoods.com. So there's a lot of places where you can find our products. We are available in the U.S. and Canada, and we also have a market in Australia as well. Next slide, please. We have been featured in several campaigns that are more specific to gluten-free. This is just one example. For gluten-free living, our PR agency, this is basically a top tier. We always reach out to them whenever we have new product launches. We always make sure that they know, hey, we've got a new gluten-free product. We want to tell you about it. So it's always a top priority for Alter Eco and the gluten-free community. So this is one example where we were featured in their vegan chocolate section. So we had a good feature there in this magazine. It had a good circulation. And then, we've had some other ones, like in women's running. We were featured for National Gluten-Free Day, our Blackout Bar, which is one of our top sellers. It's an 85% cacao bar. And so that was featured for Gluten-Free Day. And that's a very, very clean bar. There's very few ingredients, and it's delicious. I highly recommend it. Next slide, please. So I think to wrap all of this up, gluten-free certification through GFCO and what it means for us, we care very deeply about our consumers who have celiac disease, are sensitive to gluten, or just prefer gluten-free products in general. That's a huge base for us now. We've been certified by GFCO since 2011, and we do everything that we can to produce safe food that meets the requirements and meets the standards of GFCO, and basically is supporting this consumer base, and that way they can have this delicious chocolate, and it's produced in a very good manner in terms of gluten-free production. So we strive as much as we can to use dedicated gluten-free facilities for all of our products, or using those manufacturers that have like dedicated lines, or if there is gluten, as Laura alluded to earlier, having like the very strict cleaning and sanitation programs in place, segregation of raw materials, and the required testing. That is very important to us. And our consumer base that is gluten-free is very large. So this is very, very important to us. And also with GFCO and the certified gluten-free logo, it's very well recognized. I mean, that's kind of like the gold standard when it comes to gluten-free certification. there's others out there, and to be honest, it's not very clear. This is just a logo that is very clear on the product packaging. Those products that are approved by GFCO, it's well recognized. You know, our consumer base knows, they see that logo and they're like, yes, I trust this. This is good. So that's one part of it. Also for Alter Eco, we're kind of in a unique position. We actually don't manufacture anything ourselves. We hire, you know, co-packers and co-manufacturers all around the world to make our product for us and bring it to life. So because we're such a global company, you know, for someone in my position in quality assurance, you know, I can't be in every place at once. You know, whether it's the co-op farms or the chocolate manufacturer or our quinoa packer or, you know, the different warehouses, we just can't be there. So the nice thing about the GFCO audit is, you know, there are auditors who go, it's a requirement for the standard, they certify certain products, but they can also do these audits at an international level. So for our manufacturer in Switzerland, GFCO is able to go out and audit them. And the nice thing about it, too, is they send very detailed audit reports at the end. So sometimes I accompany our manufacturers and packers for these audits if I'm able. But if not, you know, that third party auditor is there. It's a very detailed report, and I have a very good snapshot of basically the whole process. So it's very, very good. That's one of my favorite things about it. And then, yeah, it's done annually, and all manufacturers are held to the same requirements. And then, as Laura alluded to earlier, you know, the requirements for being gluten-free are more strict than the FDA. FDA is still at 20 parts per million for gluten-free, and then GFCO requires less than 10 parts per million. So we definitely want to produce as safe a product as possible, and so they make that happen. And then finally, I would say with the testing, there's, you know, certainly a lot of requirements for testing, and it's a good verification of everything else for the whole process, receiving of materials, you know, everything that Laura had talked about. And the testing is a good verification. And the fact that GFCO only requires certain test methods is very good. My background before Alter Eco was I worked for a food testing laboratory, and not all test kits are made the same. You know, there are some that are actually validated by AOAC. They go through a huge, you know, lots of research and panels to, you know, make sure that, you know, this is actually a good test kit. And there's this whole validation process, and GFCO will only accept those test kits and those results, which is fantastic. Not all gluten-free certifiers will do that. They're just like, just send us a report, just show us it's less than 10 parts per million, and you're all good. But that doesn't really do much at the end of the day. So GFCO is very robust. They're very thorough. And yeah, in our view, they are the gold standard when it comes to gluten-free. So I think that's about it from my end.
So Melissa, thank you so much for all the information. I do have a question for you. You mentioned manufacturing in different parts of the world. And my question being, as a company of your size, does having the certification mark help you from a global perspective?
It does, yes. It is becoming, you know, more recognized around the world. You know, the only exception would just be Australia. We have a different certifier there, but certainly, you know, in the U.S. and Canada, we are seeing growth and just more recognition of that logo. We aren't selling our products anywhere in the EU, so I'm not really sure, you know, how it's growing there. But, you know, I know, like with our manufacturer in Switzerland, you know, there's certainly been more exposure, you know, with GFCO, and they've certainly learned a lot. And they, you know, they talk to me about how good and how thorough the audits are. And yeah.
Oh, good. So, all right. Well, thank you so much again for your perspective and for sharing the Alter Eco product line and why, you know, GFCO is important for you. And we really appreciate you just being on the call with us today. So thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I know we're running over the 45-minute mark, but I do want to address some of the questions that we have that have been coming in. I have seen also that a lot of you have already started to go to the food certification forum, so that's awesome. We will be approving you so you can hop onto there. Again, if there's any questions that we do not have time to answer here, please put them in there, and we'll be able to monitor that and address those questions and keep this conversation going in there. I do know one of the questions that came in talked about how we work with different gluten-free influencers that may be out there that people are following. And for us here at GIG and GFCO, we do try to have cordial relationships with everyone who's out there. We know our standards, and if somebody is out there and talking about our standards, we will be ones to speak with them about that, have a conversation, defend our certification where it's stated falsely. But we do not. I know in the community there has been some antagonistic things going on social media lately, and that's not something that we like to get into. We stand by our certification standards and we'll gladly back those up, but we like to work with influencers. We like to work with other people who are out there, and really it is about you and the community in terms of getting you safe product and making sure that you understand that when you see that certification logo from GFCO on a package, that it is something that you can continue to trust and continue to have that type of the confidence in when you select that product. Michelle, are there any other questions that came in during the chat that that we need to address at this time?
Yeah, we have a few questions. One of them is for Molly that we received quite a few times. People would love a little bit more clarification about the prevalence of Americans buying gluten-free products. I think the statistic was 1 in 3 Americans. So if you do have any more information on that, if you'd like to share that with everyone.
And Molly, are you muted?
Hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me now? I've been talking to myself. Is it the question on the source of that information, or just explaining? It's the statistics that I've read, and I should have the source if I can find it. If not, I can get it to you all. Is that 1 in 3 Americans opt for gluten-free. So that doesn't just include those with celiac or any kind of allergy. That's people like me who, I have 2 kids who are highly sensitive, but I also just avoid it for my own health. So those are people that if 2 products are in front of them and they're otherwise equal, they're going to go, 1 in 3 Americans will opt for the gluten-free one. And whether that's because of celiac or just for lifestyle or for health. And I'm looking to see if I have the source, but I have it somewhere if I don't have it. If I can't find it on the call. Did that answer the question though?
Yeah, and if you can find that source, what we can do is we can put it into our questions and the answers to the questions that we don't get to, and we'll send it out there. Sure. So when you receive the follow-up to this webinar, everyone who's involved with it, there'll be that link or that source for you that will have Molly included.
Okay, I'll find it.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that. Michelle, are there any others that we have time to address right now?
Yeah, another question we received, this is something that we hear often on social media. A product that has been reported, if it's labeled or certified GFCO, but the ingredients contain hydrolyzed wheat protein. The question is, the product, I think what the question that's being asked is, the product has not been recalled and it still remains for sale. It's still listed on the latest GIG and GFCO list. Shouldn't the company's product be dropped until they prove they are safe again? So Laura, we're hoping that maybe you can answer this one with some detail to kind of get some clarity.
Hey, Michelle, can you guys hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is a good question. This is actually a specific incident from a couple of months ago, but it lets me point out a couple of the ways we're always trying to make the program a little better. So in this instance, this product that they're talking about was actually a cosmetic, which points out a problem in the industry. There's actually no one who can force a recall of a cosmetic, not even the FDA. So realizing that, we've made several improvements in the GFCO program to try to address this kind of issue. The first one we've done is our safety alerts page, and I don't know the website for that, Chris. Maybe you can help me out and point people to that safety alerts page, so we can get information out to consumers as quickly as possible about products that are mislabeled or dangerous for some other reason. Had this been a food product, there would have automatically been an FDA recall, but we would still be putting that up on our safety alerts page to let people know. The second thing we've done internally is institute a policy that if there is a repeat of this kind of mislabeling or mispackaging, whether there's a consumer safety issue or not, we will withdraw certification from that company's entire product line. Even if there's not consumer safety concerns, even if there isn't a gluten component in that mislabeled product, it's really confusing for consumers, and at some point they don't know what to believe. So if we see that repeat, we would just remove certification. The third thing we are working on is a live searchable list of our certified products. Right now, people get that in a list that's updated, I think monthly we're doing it now, but that does create a lag time if there's a problem with a product. So very soon, you guys will be seeing a live searchable list online. So if an instance like this happens, we can take that off immediately.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. And we did put in the chat box the link to that safety alerts page that Laura was referencing on our gfco.org website. Michelle, any other ones? I think we have time for one more.
Yeah, we have one more question, actually. Someone asked, how does a company who is currently certified from GFCO request a detailed audit report from an inspection at the co-packer? It's a little more specific, this one.
I'm guessing that one's for me again. It sort of depends on the contractual arrangements. If the certification contract is directly with the co-packer, then that audit report is the property of the co-packer and GFCO can't share it. So they would have to go to the co-packer and ask them for a copy of that report. If the company requesting the report holds a direct contract with GFCO, a direct certification contract, not just a licensing contract, that's more information than probably anybody wants, then if they have that direct contract, then they should be getting those audit reports every year automatically. So if they're not getting them, they should contact us and let us know.
All right, and Michelle, you just indicated there's one more question to address.
One more question, yeah. What goes into determining the risk factor assigned to both ingredients and specific suppliers of ingredients? How are ingredients and suppliers assessed?
Boy, we could do a really long webinar just on that. Generally, risk is assessed by GFCO's many years of doing this, and things like recall histories and contamination incidents, things like that. So risk factors aren't static. They can change. If we suddenly notice an industry is having a problem, that can affect the ingredient risk factors. We don't assign initial risk by supplier because we're not judging the supplier, we're judging the supply chain and that ingredient. But the supplier can have an effect on the ingredient risk down the line. So if you give us your list of ingredients, we say something is a 3 because that ingredient has historically had issues with contamination or recalls. You can then provide us documentation from your supplier to have that risk reduced, because we know there are a lot of people out there who really vet their suppliers well, who've worked with the same supplier for 10 years. That supplier is always providing them testing. They may go out and do audits of the supplier themselves. You can provide us that kind of information and we can then reduce the risk factor. So initial risking doesn't take the supplier into account, but supplier can be very important if we get the right documentation from them to be able to reduce that risk.
Okay, we're coming up on the top of the hour. So again, I'm going to wrap this up at this time. We will be going over any other questions that we receive, and again, sending you a handout or an email that addresses those. You can also remember to go to that Facebook group and ask any questions there, and we can help you out through that forum. So I wanted to thank everyone again for participating in the webinar today. Especially, I would like to thank Laura and Molly and Melissa for their time and participation. Another thank you also goes out to the webinar sponsor, Import LLC. They're the makers of Gluten Tox Pro test kits. We also want to remind you that webinars and educational resources such as these, they're not possible without the support of you, our community. So please go to our GIG site at www.gluten.org, hit that donate button, and help us with being able to provide more opportunities such as this one in the future. So to our friends on the East Coast, stay safe this weekend, please. And to everyone else, thank you again for attending, and have a great remainder of your day.